Heartiest congratulations to SABERA on the 6th edition.
Next time, let's have an all-women team so that more people can get attached to it and the impact will become bigger.
To be able to actually see cross-collaboration.
They could really benefit a lot from the SABERA's network on the innovation and philanthropic model.
We've had very large organizations, Maharatna PSUs actually come up on stage and say this.
You're amazing. You're just amazing.
Thanks to SABERA, and they've been supporting them over the years.
Namaste and a very warm welcome to yet another beautiful episode of Social Impact Leaders Simply with Suparnaa. I have a very special guest, a SABERA awardee from the 2023 awards, as were culminated at the Teen Murti on December 7th. But before I start the introduction, as is cursory, I would like to pay my obeisance to the higher power. Whatever the higher power that you believe in, Shakti has held me in good stead. So I'll start by reciting the Saraswati Vandana. Essentially, what it talks about is dispelling the darkness of ignorance that resides in our hearts with the light of knowledge. And that's exactly what we're also trying to do with SABERA, as the name suggests also. And we're also trying to continue that intent with these interactions that we have. But first, this very old Sanskrit verse. Ya kundendu tusharahara dhavala, ya shubhra vastravrita, ya veena varadanda mandita kara, ya shweta padamasana, ya brahmachitta shankar prabhutibhi, devai sada vandita, samam patu saraswati, bhagavati nishesh jadyapaha. I'd like to introduce, and I'm very proud in doing so, a SABERA awardee who has been awarded in the category of gender equity, diversity, and inclusion. His name is Souvik Saha. He is the founder for People for Change and also the founder for the Jamshedpur Queer Circle. Thank you so much, Souvik, for taking out the time to speak with us. And also congratulations one more time for your award. Besides the SABERA award, as you were telling me, you were also the recipient of almost all fellowships worth their salt as far as India is concerned. And rightly so, considering that you've been for the past 12 years working towards creating safe spaces for the youth. You're in alignment with schools and colleges. And you're also focusing a lot about understanding and accepting the challenges, especially for the youth who align themselves with the LGBTQI community. Souvik, very happy that you could take out the time to interact with us.
Thank you so much, Suparna. Thank you so much, SABERA. I think it is a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to speak about my work. And once again, thank you so much for all that you do. I think for me, the SABERA platform has been very important. And especially when I came to the function and saw the kind of innovative practices that were being awarded. So I think kudos to you. And thank you so much for this honor.
Thank you.
So happy to be here.
We will start with the very basics, because I feel that while even though there is a lot of noise as far as the LGBTQI community is concerned, and I say noise because I think still people at large are not really aware of what, maybe even the terminologies stand for. Say, for example, when you founded the Jamshedpur Queer Circle, what is it that you were referring to when you say queer?
So the Jamshedpur Queer Circle was founded, I think. So this is, we have been already running an organization that works with young people. We work in co-creating safe, nurturing spaces for young people, such that they begin to become deeply reflective and empathetic leaders. So we were working with all forms of marginalization, but gender marginalized groups was something that hitherto we were not working. So there was an incident that happened sometime in 2019 that really got me thinking that we need to work on this issue. Also, my journey as being, I think, so the main idea was my journey as being part of the community and identifying as being part of this community, and the discrimination that I had faced also came to the fore when this episode happened, which prompted me to start Jamshedpur Queer Circle. So Jamshedpur Queer Circle primarily is, I think, the only space right now in Jharkhand where LGBTQ young people can come and talk about themselves, and we invest in building their leadership such that they can advocate for their rights in education, health, employment, and elsewhere. Suparna, when you asked me about the term Jamshedpur Queer Circle, what does the term queer mean? So I think, so first of all, the term queer, if you Google literal translation, means something very different. No, it means Ajib. But the term queer, in terms of how does it work in the spectrum, means everybody who doesn't align to binaries or structures or stereotypes that society has set upon them. So queer would basically be a person who belongs to the community, the rainbow community or the LGBTQ community, and he does not align to binaries that basically patriarchal setups or heteronormative structures that have already been imposed. They do not align to those binaries, and they would like to express themselves, or their identities are different from the binaries. So if you have to understand, this is the basic meaning of queer.
Mm,
And
mm.
Jamshedpur Queer Circle again is a space for everybody who doesn't align to the binaries and who would like to express themselves differently, or who would like, whose identity, gender identity is different from the one that they were assigned, the sex that they were assigned at birth, or everybody that wishes to, love or wishes to express themselves in the way that they understand themselves or the way that they
So
feel.
many questions in my mind right now, so many, because you've touched upon so many things that I am ignorant of, and I'm sure a lot of people would be hearing this, watching this, maybe even for posterity, need to understand the basics before actually going ahead and addressing what the issues are. And there are some very dire issues that need to be addressed, considering that you mentioned that people are actually committing suicide, and there was this person within,
Yeah.
or the person that who you were working with actually went ahead and did so. And you also mentioned that somewhere, you yourself have faced some of the discrimination, and that's what actually propelled you to start something like this. So let's start with your journey. Let's start with, how is it that in your life, in your progression, identify that you are not aligned to any binary, or you are different?
So I would not call it that I'm different. I think I'm very normal, and difference is something. It's again a structure that is very heteronormative, which tells people that they are different. Nobody is different. Everybody is free to be the way that they are, to express themselves the way that they are, and to love the way that they want to. I think this is something that the Constitution of our country has given us the right to be the way that they are. Freedom of expression, freedom of love is something. So for me to be different is I identify as being a cisgender pansexual. So so by pansexual means
Too much
I
jargon.
so I'll tell you how it works. Cisgender is means I was assigned male at birth, and I believe that my gender identity is that of a male. But I am attracted to I am attracted to people beyond binaries. Okay, so beyond male, female, or trans, I can be attracted. So either physically attracted, romantically attracted, spiritually attracted, emotionally attracted to people beyond these binaries, and hence I identify as being cisgender pansexual. I think so. I think when I was growing up, and there was a lot of confusions. When you are suddenly attracted to somebody, but you do not. But then you already been told that ये तो सही नहीं है. There's the
Mm.
entire thing is that it's not correct. No, if I'm attracted to my friend, I'm also confused. I'm attracted to a girl or a woman. Again, I feel a kind of attraction to somebody who's of the same gender identity as me. So I think growing up there was a lot of confusion, very very confused, and there was no place for me to go. So these confusions, I was fortunate that my family was supportive such that I could complete my education. No, so my family was not aware, but then I could complete my education. Also, I was not visibly trans, no. So for me, the discrimination did not happen very visibly, but the discrimination that I faced is the literature around me, okay, or the I had no role model, for people. So my entire confusion was I had to navigate it myself through a long, long time. Only when I went to college, I started seeing people. Even then, there was no language for which I could identify myself with. So if I was loving somebody, if I was attracted, so there was no, because all I heard was this is wrong, and there was abuses, there was abusive language. The people were calling out such people, saying that this is normal. They should be, to the extent of they should be violently killed, and this was what I was hearing. So when you talk about discrimination, so the lack of availability of any role models, or the lack of availability of LGBTQ idols or LGBTQ representation either in politics, in art, in literature was absolutely absent. You know? So for me to be able to find my foothold somewhere where I could find somebody who thought like me was very difficult. So as I was growing up, and this slowly but very very gradually, when I left the city, when I went to Calcutta to study, and when I was in college, I started meeting people. But for me, this journey has been very lonely, but fortunately, I started working with young people, and I was very clear about what I wanted to do in life. And when I formed the organization, but even then, I always felt that I had no space to go to. All my
Mm.
friends were supposedly, all they were all hetero individuals, who called themselves straight. I don't know, for whatever reason, and so there was no dialogue. There was nobody whom I could fall back to. So this discrimination in terms of not being available, no space to see, and the constant slur and the abuse that I was hearing about the community was something that disturbed me greatly when I was growing up.
So I'm hearing this. I hear what you're saying, but in terms of, I don't know, in terms of a conventional way of looking at, say, for example, we've had references in mythology as we spoke. We've had references, even in terms of art, for that matter. If you see Michelangelo's, paintings, and the whole ergonomic structure and the physical structure of the man, and the the creator touching the hands of the created, and his entire artwork. So while maybe the terminologies may not have existed as they do as of now, but I think if you track down in history, there are references all throughout. People who do not align themselves to the binaries. One. The second thing is that, like I said, in a traditional way or in a conventional way, one would imagine, while I was growing up, transgender, what it meant essentially was that maybe you're born with a certain defect in the chromosome, which is that when the mitosis and meiosis happen in the cell division, then the XX Y chromosome can fuse together, or the YYX can fuse together, and that's how a person is born, and that's how they do not align themselves to the binaries. Whereas now, when I had interviewed, also there's another lady, Abhina Aher, who was heading, I think, HIV Alliance at that point in time, and she told me that transgender essentially would mean somebody who has transitioned from one gender to the other, whereas somebody who has been born with that chromosomal defect would be intersex. Is that the correct understanding that I have?
So, yeah, so first of all, the term given defect, I think, is a problem. When we assign the term defect to something which can happen. So when we talk about defect, we mean it is out of what is normally acceptable. So anything that is normally acceptable is not correct. So the defect, when you talk about intersex, it's correct, but intersex is more physiological or biological. So intersex people. So earlier, like you said, in references to earlier, how transgenders were considered. It was considered that transgenders were born transgenders. Basically, they belong to a community. In India, the Kinnar Samuday or the Hijra community, which is more visible, were considered to be transgender. This transgenders is way beyond that. It's a big umbrella. Hijra or the Kinnar community is a particular order of practice. It's a particular community only within the umbrella. So when you talk about intersex, so intersex is again is a type of something that a person can be born with. So what happens in that is intersex people, like I said earlier, were basically said that they would be transgenders. So now intersex also falls within the umbrella. So first of all, it's not a defect; it's something that can happen, and the doctor certifies it that whether this person is intersex or not. And to understand what is transgender right now, so transgender for us would be any person who does not identify with the. So if somebody is assigned female at birth and does not, her gender identity is not that of a female. Okay, the gender identity is different, something that they feel that they are. So that person becomes a transgender. So for me, I, who was assigned male at birth, if I feel my gender identity is of a male, so I'm cisgender. So anybody whose gender identity does not align with the gender assigned at birth is a transgender. The transgender is a big umbrella. So there are various kinds of people within that umbrella.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you have undergone the hormonal injections or you undergone the sexual transition for you to become a transgender. It's how you identify with the other
Yes. How do you
gender.
feel? How do
How
you
do you
actually feel within yourself? If you do not, so if you've been identified a male, but you never felt like a male, you always felt that you were a woman. So and you identify as that one person being a woman. So now here, woman would also be somebody who chooses to dress up like a woman or who might not choose to dress up like a woman. That's not important. What is important is who do they feel that they are? What is their gender identity? So that person becomes a transgender.
So, by this definition, cisgender, most of the ones who identify as heterosexuals would be cisgender, right? No.
No, not heterosexual. So sexuality is a different term. Gender identity is a different term. Okay.
Okay.
So cisgender is some. So if I identify as being a cisgender, but my attraction might be to anybody. So I might
Okay.
be attracted to anybody. So it is not necessary that I would be attracted to only a female. Like in my case, I'm a pansexual. So my attraction. So hence I am cisgender, but my sexual orientation might be different. My gender identity is again of a male. So when we look at identity, the spectrum of identity also, so identity is again formed of four things. So one of them is sexual identity, one of them is sexual orientation, the other is the gender identity, and then is gender expression. So all of these four together combine to form an identity. So
I see.
hence a cisgender person can also be attracted to a person of either the same gender or to opposite gender. So that's perfect, or to both genders, or
That's
to
a lot
anybody.
of nuanced,
Yes.
conversation as far as this is concerned. And I apologize because I lack the understanding and hence probably the empathy. And I think a lot of people would be in a similar boat. And that is the reason why, we're having this conversation to understand and then maybe go a step forward in trying to probably be a little more inclusive. And also in terms of defect, it's a wrong word. Absolutely, you're right about that. The only thing is that away from normal is what one can say, and then what is normal. But from a physiological perspective, normally in terms of heterosexuals, or normally, sorry, not heterosexuals, but normally in terms of when a baby is born, the X and Y chromosome is there, or an X and X chromosome is there. But an anomaly is such that when the XXY or XXY or XYY kind of happens, and that's maybe different from a regular baby which is born, and that's the reason why it's considered an anomaly. But what is alarming though is what you're talking about, non-safe spaces for young people who may not be aligned towards the heterosexuality or otherwise. So, and especially when you talk about people going to such extremes of taking their lives, do you have any kind of statistics that kind of tell us that this is an issue with probably non-binary people, as opposed to because there are suicides for various other things as well, but you feel that the non-binary segment of society is plagued by this, and is actually making them take this extreme step.
So there is no data available with me on the suicides that have occurred. So suicides in young people will occur for various reasons. What I can tell you is in my experience. So I have had one experience which I already shared with you in terms of a friend who went and died by suicide. Who died by suicide because of the discrimination that he faced owing to his gender identity. When you talk about rates, I'll tell you in more in terms of understanding it. How is it a matter of concern? So for any young person, the kind of people that, when we work with a young person, for not being able to express themselves in the way that they want, with no visible structures of support either available in school, family, any young space, or in entertainment. So any four of spaces where a young person is normally found, there is no visible structure, there is no visible narrative of him that he can align to. So that is a cause of huge stress. So in certain cases, it is dysphoria. So gender dysphoria takes extreme forms. It can take the form of, so dysphoria is actually marked distress. So there is distress, hence it is dysphoria. And dysphoria occurs because heteronormative structures want us to behave, want us to work, want us to love, want us to express, want us to talk, walk in a particular way, which is not something that the people would align to. And when there is no support, there is no narrative around that. So there is acute distress. So gender dysphoria leads to very, very many things. Okay. It might, so I do not have, like I said, I do not have figures of suicide. What it does lead to is what I've seen is in the work that we do with school is dropouts in school and abuse in schools. So we at Jamshedpur Queer Circle had, conducted a survey with around 200 or 250 adolescents in schools, like in low income private schools and private schools. So we found that almost more than 25% were found to be gender curious, or so they were all gender curious or about themselves. What was strange is that we found that almost 70% have experienced bullying in school, and out of the 70% that have experienced bullying, most of them have experienced bullying because of their expression, which is again a form of identity. If somebody chooses to walk in a particular way, talk in a particular way, and especially by, this is more so in higher and secondary. It begins with secondary school. So out of the 70%, almost 20, I think 35% says that it began in secondary school, and most of the bullying was by male teachers. Apart from the survey that we did, so what does this bullying take the form of? It takes the form of abuse, ridicule, no safe spaces, lack of counseling, lack of any adult in those spaces who is willing to or who is capacitated to hear them. So what they find is the people who do not confine to these binaries have nowhere to go. In most extreme cases, many people that we have worked with drop out of school. That is the worst thing for a child that can happen. So to dropping out of school means, and if there is no support for these children, usually there's no support at home. And if there's no support at home, and if they drop out of the schools, then there's no other place to go. So many of them end up in streets, which again is a form of, so once they're in streets, and homelessness compounds many issues once you're on the streets. So for them, so begging, getting into drugs, violence, getting into sex work becomes very easy. So for us, it is, so the work that Jamshedpur Queer Circle also does is so we do a lot of work in schools and with principals, with teachers, with students, with staff of school, and we try to. So for us, the entire idea is to make schools a safe place. We want children to be in schools and not be discriminated because of their gender choices, and because of their
And
gender expression.
when you say, sorry, I'm cutting in between. When you say that the children drop out of school because of this, there are no other factors contributing to it, or it could be, an amalgamation of a lot of things. And do they belong to a certain economic background for them to be, out on the streets and not have the protection of the house anymore?
Yeah, see, yeah, of course, economic backgrounds does play an important role. So when they drop out of school, what I'm saying is, as per the study, so most of them drop out of bullying, okay, intense bullying. So I'll just give you a story of a trans woman in Jamshedpur, and she was being brought up like a boy at home, and she identified as being a girl. So the moment she was in class six, I think fifth, she started growing her nails and her hair because that was a form of expression, and there was intense bullying to the extent that there was abuse in toilets, hounding by senior boys on her way to. So and she had to drop out of school. And what happens is there was no support at home. So the support at home, I think, does not again come from education. It depends. It might be because of economic background, but we have seen that support varies. So it is not only that people from economically underprivileged backgrounds would be more susceptible to abuse. It's not that. But yeah, largely you are out of your homes when there's no support at home. So sometimes when you're asked to leave home, and this might happen at various stages. It does not even always happen at sixth. It might happen when you're in class 10th or 12th, at various stages. But dropping out and becoming homeless, to a certain extent, yes, in the economic backgrounds does play an important role. But then again, we have cases where people from very affluent backgrounds also had. In that case, they're not out of the street, but they're not in homes either. So they either have to migrate, so they have a choice to go to another city or to another. They're sent away to other cities, but they're not in the structure of home.
And you know what? This whole thing about bullying, I feel not, it doesn't necessarily, while of course there is a kind of a fallout that happens with the non-binaries, but it is something which needs to be addressed, because it's almost a kind of a power play that happens, I think, especially also when it is towards women. Most of the rape cases also are essentially a power play more than a sexual this thing. And similarly, I think all of these things start very young when you're in school, and unless something is done about that, when there is a characteristics of being a bully in a child that is not curbed, can actually lead on for that person to become, do some heinous crimes later on. So it's not
So if you
necessarily just for the non-binary, but I think they become a victim of something like this, which is an ill in society, I guess.
No, but I think in the study which we did, it is mostly when we talk about bullying, I was specifically talking about children who are non-binary, who identified as being non-binary, and the amount of bullying that they faced. So that was extremely high. That is also because of their choice of expression, or how they wish to express themselves. So everything stopped at expression or their choice of how they want to sit. So the bullying is intense. So bullying, while it exists across for all children, it is more acute for children, who belong to the LGBTQ community, young people from the community, or people who do not identify to the binary. So their bullying, and
Essentially those who are vulnerable. That's as important as this thing as that, I guess.
yeah, also vulnerable because of the choices that they make, their gender, because so that is what has made them vulnerable. So now, and bullying here would not only be from students but also from teachers, because then the teachers have no idea about the entire spectrum. They don't know, because for them also it is normal that a boy has to behave this way and a girl. So it's very simple, like very simple, like, क्या लड़कियों की तरह चलते हो, तुम तो लड़की का रोल भी कर सकते हो, तुम तो हमेशा लड़कियों की तरह बोलते हो. It's bullying, and there is no existing structures in place. The entire idea is in the school system. When we talk about creating safe, inclusive spaces, even when we have counselors, many a times counselors are not queer affirmative counselors. Well, there are counselors in place. So queer affirmative counseling is very different from normal counseling. There is no separate structures, policies, rules, laws in place. There is no work happening with parents to make them understand. So there's a lot of things.
It makes me circle back to a conversation that I had with a psychologist, Aruna Bhuta. I don't know if you remember. She was one of the first few psychologists that, or maybe she's a psychiatrist, sorry, that who used to also do a show on radio and television, etc. And I'd had an opportunity to interact with her, and she said that when we look at any kind of sexual violence or sexual crimes that happen, the perpetrator actually focuses on a person who is not as confident, or who is, maybe a little meek, or who will not create too much of this thing. So it's almost like, if you are confident out there, if you are walking with confidence, irrespective of whatever you're wearing or how you're, then the perpetrator will probably not focus on you. They will focus on the one who's shy, who's scared, who's not comfortable in their surroundings. And I think this probably also translates further into the non-binary community, because as it is, maybe they don't have safe spaces to express themselves freely the way they would like to, and they become a subject to being bullying, of being bullied, or maybe even on, later on, even sexual violences. I mean, again, I'm circling back to my conversation with Abhina here, and she shared her personal story of how when she was in school, and because she identified as a woman and she wanted to dress and dance like a woman, and the boys, the adolescent boys, literally molested her, in bathrooms, and the teachers never kind of probably stood by her, because the teachers themselves were kind of clueless as to how do you address something like that, and started ridiculing or maybe encouraging those boys instead. So yes, creating these safe spaces is extremely important, irrespective of who you are, how you want to dress yourself, how you want to present yourself to the society. Even in nature, we talk about biodiversity, because you can't really have one kind of a plant or one kind of an animal across the globe. You have to have various expressions of how they are, and that's what makes the world so beautiful. And similarly, in my conversation with you, I think more than anything else, beyond who you are, what you are, how you identify, I think a basic aspect is of being able to express yourself the way you are, without having to look over your shoulder all the time, and your basic safety being compromised. I think that exactly is what it kind of boils down to. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. But then that is only going to happen when we understand, this entire dialogue around what is normal and what is not normal. Everything is normal. Like when you talk about nature, nature has space for everything. So we have to understand there is nothing called, heteronormative structures, and heteronormative symbols are not normal. So everybody is normal in their own way, because it is the law allows you. So the moment we begin to understand and create that space for others, and that's very difficult. That's only going to happen when media steps in, when there are books written, when there is representation in literature. Well, there are many things. So right now we have a law in place, but for the law to be actually being able to be implemented in workspaces, not only in schools, in workspaces, in entertainment, everywhere, we need people who, with an intent of being able to willingness to share power, or willingness to so I'm not even calling it acceptance, because it is here right now. Everything is about, when we talk about patriarchal setups also, how it works is the willingness that anybody who's different or who's threatening, I'll not be able to give power because I'm scared of my power. So here, the community is not asking space from you. It's just asking space for itself. Nobody is there to take power from anybody else, but we are rising in power equally. So there, I think the struggle begins. So you are very correct. When you talk about providing these spaces, it becomes critical that we have these conversations. We have these conversations everywhere. So the first step is actually people begin to get aware. Only when they are aware, only when they understand that this is normal and this is existing, there are people all around me. It might be my friend, it might be my brother. And how do I work as an ally, or how do I come and become an ally? And in that ally, so there are everybody is a stakeholder in providing that space, because the space, this community is marginalized, has been pushed to the brink. And also now look at the intersectionality in marginalization, it becomes even more complicated if we look at intersectionality. So hence it is imperative that we have these conversations, like you truly said. Yes, the space needs to be created, and this space can only happen when we begin, first of all, with an intent to understand, and with an intent to go beyond everything and understand that everybody has equal rights,
Correct.
irrespective of who they are, whoever they are, however they are born, whoever they choose to love, however they wish to dress, whoever they identify with. Everybody has a right. Everybody has equal rights in the
I
country.
think
I
I
think
think
that's
there are a lot of conversations that are required. In fact, I too have a lot of questions that I still want to ask. But you know what? I'm probably a little optimistic also, because I feel that these conversations. I mean, I'm sure that you would concur as well that over the past decade itself, if we see, there's a lot more conversation which is
yeah.
happening. There's a lot more open spaces where expressions are created,
True.
which were not there earlier, and
True.
probably a large section of people feel that this is a construct of, or it's something new, because these conversations are happening. Whereas I guess it was always there. It's just that they were
Uh,
hidden under the carpet. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, yeah, even I'm very optimistic. When we talk about, yes, it is true that these conversations, I think even the law came into place, so the Transgender Protection Act came into place, the NALSA judgment came forward, which paved the way for many such, so not only conversation, but actual implementation of ground, so how do you create equal opportunities for this community? I think you're true. These conversations have taken up, and I'm also very optimistic. I'm also optimistic and I'm hopeful that, people listen to this and they begin to think about, does it happen? Do you have policies in place? Are you talking about, how are you looking at gender at homes everywhere? So yes, Suparna, absolutely, I concur with you on this, that, these conversations have been happening and that have gotten more steam over the past decade. And I think the way ahead, so we need to continue this. I think we need to step up and continue this and talk about it more and more. So
If there is
so it's not only in education.
one piece of advice, or maybe just a comment that you would want to wrap up this conversation with, what would that be?
I would just say, love. I think there is no antidote to love. Start loving people for who they are. उन्हें प्यार से बड़ी कोई चीज नहीं है. नफरत करके आप कहाँ ही जाओगे, कितने दूर जाओगे? I think the only thing that I can tell people is, you open your arms wide and love your child, love your friend, love your neighbor, love your colleague, and begin to accept people the way they are. Everybody has a right to be loved and also, be loved and reciprocate that love. So my advice to people is to look beyond all identities of race, religion, ethnicity, gender, and everybody, to begin to understand that love is the only language that's going to help humanity sustain. And so that's something that I would just like to say.
I couldn't have wrapped it up better than this. Thank you so much, Souvik, for doing this,
Thank you
for the
so
work
much.
that you're doing. Most importantly, creating safe spaces for the youth, irrespective of what they identify with, whether they're heterosexual, they're non binary, whatever it is, and accepting them with open arms. Um, and you know what? Even when we say accepting them, who are we to accept?
Yes,
That's how they're supposed to be. That's how
yes,
everybody is
yes.
supposed to be. So,
And hence love. And hence
and
love.
hence love. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. So we keep doing
Thank
the
you.
good work and hoping to see some more of your good work as part of SABERA in 2024 as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you once again. I think you do such wonderful work. Thank you, Suparna, for providing this platform. And thank you so much once again.
All the best. God